Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Bookmarked Book Club live show for I Was Born for This. I almost got that wrong. By Alice Oseman, which was our June book of the month. Just a brief little disclaimer: our July book of the month is Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. If you want to get that early, get it from the library or from your bookstore or anything. But we will be talking about this on Hailey's channel next month. So. Yay! Yay. So back to what we're talking about today. Just to let you all know, our first half of this will be a spoiler-free discussion. So even if you haven't read this, you can stick around and hear about our thoughts. We'll let you know what we thought, if we'd recommend it, all of that. But let's just start off right off the bat. What do you all think about our chosen book?
I think we have pretty similar feelings on it. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I just thought it was deeply average.
I also gave the book 3 out of 5. It's kind of like a 3.53. I don't really know where I'm at yet. But I agree. I think it was a pretty average book. I enjoyed reading it. I read the whole thing in 3 hours. It was just super fast. But I feel like I just wanted more out of it. And that's like my biggest thing. That's why it wasn't a 4 or 5 star book for me. I just wanted more out of it because I loved the concept. And I felt like it was executed well in some ways, and in other ways it was kind of lacking. So yeah, it's kind of where I'm sitting.
I also gave this bad boy a 3 out of 5 stars. Definitely a 3. I don't think any higher than that. I'm not sure. We were talking about this a little bit earlier before we started, but I'm not sure if I would necessarily recommend this book to anyone. I think there are definitely some better books out there that talk about fandom culture, even by Alice Oseman herself. Radio Silence, it talks all about like fandom culture. And do all of her books talk about it?
Solitaire doesn't really.
Okay.
Yeah. Not too much.
But Radio Silence, I would definitely recommend over this. I think all of us would because we all gave it a pretty high rating. Personally, I'm not really a fan of books that are centered around celebrities, especially like fake celebrities, especially celebrity relationships with normal people, especially when there's two perspectives, one of which is from a normal person and one is a celebrity. This reminds me a lot of Geekerella by Ashley Poston, which I also gave a definite 3 out of 5 stars. It just, I don't know, maybe it's because it's about a fake band and sometimes that works and sometimes it's like I can't hear their music, so. But yeah, 3 out of 5 stars, definitely deeply average. I read it very quickly, though. That's why I didn't give it a lower rating, because I was completely absorbed when I was reading it, and I needed to know what happened. But then the last 100 pages happened, and what was that? We'll talk about that in our spoiler discussion. But the ending really knocked it down for me because I was very confused with the choices that were made.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about recommending it necessarily, because I think I was saying this earlier too. I feel like this book is so good to read if you want to get out of a reading slump. Because I mean, I know Hailey doesn't feel this way because for her, reading it was like slow and difficult to get through. But for me, it was just so easy to read and compulsively readable. And I think I would recommend it like if you want to get out of a reading slump and you just want something that's very fast and like easy to finish. But again, it might not be easy to finish for you if you're like Hailey or like that type of reader. It's all like subjective, but yeah, I don't know. I found it so easy to read, and that's why like I really enjoyed my like experience of reading it, because I've been in kind of a reading slump, and so now I'm planning on just like reading the rest of the day and like filming a vlog because I want to keep reading right now. So yeah, I would recommend it based on that. I do think that like it's an interesting discussion about fandom culture and celebrity culture. My biggest complaint about the book is that it like doesn't delve as deep into it as I wanted it to. And that's like really what I wanted. Like they would like touch on something and I was like, oh my gosh, we're finally getting there. And then they would just kind of like stop and go and talk about something else or like develop the plot a little bit further. And I was like, can we talk a little bit more about this, please? Like, I just want a little more. So yeah, that's kind of how I felt.
I felt like it took me forever to get through, as you mentioned. I think a big part of that is because I would have DNF'd it, like 100%.
At what point?
What?
At what point would you have DNF'd?
I think probably like 30 pages in, maybe.
Oh, whoa.
I was just so bored. And I had nothing, like, I didn't find it relatable at all. And I guess I need that, like, little bit of relatability to a story in order to, like, connect with it and actually want to read it. So I don't know. I was so bored. I didn't really like care for the characters. I did eventually, but like it took me a long time to get there. So I was like, if this were for anything else, I would have DNF'd it. And just the fact that I couldn't DNF it, I think made it so much harder to get through because I'm like so used to DNFing now if I don't like something. So I was like, ugh. But
yeah,
I feel like sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just like what you said with the relatability factor, and that's something that I thought this was going to be a much more relatable story, especially when it talks about fandom culture, but the plot was outlandish. It's just so many things happened, and so many like convenient things happened that like people were in the same place. I know, but like that's why like the beginning it seems like a completely different story because of like fandom meetups and they do other things that I thought it was going to be like just following like there are two sides to every story and like you look up to these celebrities but they have things going on. Like I thought it was going to be that type of story and it wasn't really. I felt like the plot really detracted from what could have been a more nuanced discussion about like fan celebrity relationships, like fan culture.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I feel like for me, I did find a few of the aspects of it pretty relatable. It like just fandom culture is something I've been like wrapped up in ever since I was in like middle school. So like I like reading anything that's about that. But I agree, Zoe, that like I feel like again, I just wanted it like I wanted more of that. And yeah, it kind of like felt like the beginning like I really liked. I think that's why like I kept wanting to read so much. And I was like, yes, I'm like super into this. At the beginning, like when I started it, I was like, this is gonna be a 4-star book. And then we got to the end and the end like was very different from the rest of it. And I feel like this isn't a common experience I have had with Alice Oseman's books, is that like I felt very much this way with Solitaire, not so much with Radio Silence, but it like takes a lot of time to like set up the climax of the story and like just the general plot, develop the characters, which is why I really like the beginning of all of her books. And then it gets to a point where like everything needs to be resolved and there are only like a few chapters left. So like it just kind of feels very rushed towards the end, and that's what I experienced with this one as well. But I did really like a lot of the things that they like discussed in terms of like fandom culture and how there are two sides of that, which we can talk more about when we talk about spoilers. But
I think for me, like I've never really been that involved in fandom. So I had no aspect of it where I was like, yes, like I understand this. Like I guess the one time that I was involved in fandom was when I was in high school in like grade 10 and 11. And I was obsessed with All Time Low is what I was.
Oh my God, what about One Direction? We've had conversations about One Direction.
I know, One Direction I really loved. But like, I wasn't like super into it, like where I was following their every move, like following a bunch of like Tumblrs, whatever. Like, no, with All Time Low, I was following a bunch of Tumblrs and everything. Like when I met them, I literally died. Like it was the best thing ever. Like that's the one time where I feel like I can relate to it. But other than that, like I've never really been like a huge like fangirl for anything. So I think that's why a big part of this I just didn't connect to, just because I see like, I don't know, I feel like they see them as like these ethereal beings who like create this music. But like, I think I just recognize them as like just people. So
you don't like immortalize them.
No, like, I know, like, those are just people. So, like, it's hard for me to be, like, a major fangirl because I'm like, that's literally just a person, like, just like me. They're just as flawed as me. I mean, probably not because that's really unattainable level of flaws, but, like, they're also flawed. Like, they have their issues, like, blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. I just feel like fandom books are a struggle for me, usually.
They definitely are catering to, like, a specific type of, like, the screaming, like, fangirl. It's everyone is, like there's not a lot of books about, like, casual fans or ones that they, like, have a lot of other, like, passions. It's a lot of the ones that are about fandom are people who, like, that's their entire life. And a lot of them are also YA books, that they're not, like, as complicated or anything. So, like, they make the one character's personality, like, this thing that they're about. Like, with Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, like, most of her entire personality is writing this fan fiction.
Yeah.
I feel like I keep saying my biggest issue with this, and it's always different things. Apparently I have many things, but I keep saying that. I did like it. But, like, I feel like one of the things that actually, like, truly bothered me about this was the way that they kind of, like, stereotyped people who I felt like the book was trying to do the opposite of that, but then sometimes it just felt like they were stereotyping fangirls or people who were, like, super into fandom culture, and that's what kind of annoyed me, I guess, because, like you were saying, Hailey, like, you don't, like, look at them as, like, these ethereal beings who are unattainable, and, like, you don't idolize them. Whereas, like, I feel like that's what everyone who is, like, not super into fandom thinks. Like, for example, the band members in this book, they all think that that's what all the fans do. But even in the book, Angel, or Ferishte, whatever we want to call her, kept saying, like, that's not what it's like. Like, I love you, and I know that I don't know you, but I can't explain to you why, like, what it is that I feel. And I was like, okay, so why are we not getting to, like, what it actually is? And that's, like, what I wanted the book to, like, actually talk about. And yeah, like, and from someone who's been in, like, fandom for so long and who fully understands, like, that complete, like, obsession and love, where it's not like I'm, like, literally in love with this person that I don't know, because that's not what it is. I fully understand that feeling. And, like, because I'm the same way, like, I don't really look at people and I don't think of them as, like, better than me. I don't think of them as, like, unattainable, or, like, I don't really idolize them in that way. It's just, like, when you're so into something like that, for me, it's usually, and, like, they kept saying it in the book too, it's because they, like, helped them through something. That music or that book or that TV show or, like, whatever it is, it helps you through something, and that's why it means so much to you. It's not even about the person. And I just wanted the book, like, it was getting there, and then it, like, kind of backtracked, and it wouldn't, like, actually get to that point, and I wanted it to get to that point. So
it's more about, like, appreciating someone, like, deeply.
Yeah, so
but, like, they never put it in those words. They're just like, I love you, and then they're like, you don't know me, you can't love me, and, like, this conversation was never finished.
Resolved, yeah, exactly.
Like, you just kept screaming into the void. That's what a lot of this felt like, is people just, like, expressing their opinions, but not, like, expressing it to another person where, like, they got a feedback loop. You know, it's just like, you're doing this, and they're like, no, I'm not, I'm doing this. Like, okay, but, like, can you change in some way? But, oh God.
I felt like so much of it was just scratching the surface. Like, it never quite, like, everything about it was one-dimensional, which I think is why I was so bored. I was just kind of like, oh, this is very cookie cutter. I feel like I wanted it to do what Radio Silence did, which is, like, delved really deeply into those issues, but it didn't. And I think maybe the fact that we read Radio Silence first, like, kind of changes things a bit. You know, it like, the expectations were definitely a bit higher, but I didn't like the writing style in this one either, which is so weird because, like, I really loved Radio Silence, but
this
one listened to the audio
a lot more like Solitaire than Radio Silence did. Like, this and
came out afterwards?
Yeah, this is her newest one. Solitaire was her first one. So, but Solitaire she wrote when I think she was, like, 17. So, like, that feels like a book that was, I mean, like, it's well written, but, like, you can tell she was younger when she wrote that book. So it makes sense, like, when you read it, but the style of this one felt very similar to that one, whereas Radio Silence feels like such a different book to me. It almost feels like they're not written by the same person.
Yeah, for sure.
But like you can tell they're all written by the same person
because it's all very Tumblr-y.
Yeah, something about it is just very those two, in my opinion, are just very similar to each other. Whereas Radio Silence is just like, I don't know, in its own other category.
But with that, I think it's because Radio Silence. Sorry to like keep on talking about Radio Silence in this, but like we have something to compare it to. But the fact that it's just such like a quiet book in a way. They're all just like trying to get through life, and like it all takes place basically in this one town where people are trying to figure out what they want to do in life. They don't really have established like things going on. Whereas in this, we're following Jimmy, who's part of like the biggest boy band of the entire world, but yet like doesn't have a bodyguard. Like what? Like a lot of sorry, we'll talk about this in the spoiler section, but a lot of this, like I had to suspend my disbelief.
You really did.
So much, because I'm like, that would never happen. Anyway, but with Radio Silence, like they're just living their day-to-day life. It's not like any like big plot things are happening, which I think is more of the style that I like with contemporaries, especially like contemporaries like this. I like ones that are more like delving deep into the thicky.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, again, to bring back Solitaire, because I'm just comparing all of them. I Was Born for This and Solitaire are very similar in that they have like a plot that generally is very like normal, and like there are normal things going on in the story, and then there's just like these kind of unbelievable like things, like suspension of disbelief really needs to happen in order for you to kind of believe that this happened. Whereas Radio Silence, like the whole plot makes sense. Like the conflict makes sense with the characters and who they are. Whereas in this, it was like things were just put into it. Like those two books, it was like elements were introduced into the plot just for the plot to like continue happening. And it wasn't really about the characters. At least that's like how I felt. This one, for sure, more than Solitaire, in my opinion, the plot was more based on the characters, and it felt a little bit more organic.
Felt cohesive.
Yeah.
Like there was more time spent like planning out the story, but also there wasn't as much plot happening. So anyway, do you think that we can... Oh, sorry,
just really quick. I will say one thing that I found very relatable, even though I wanted it to be more relatable, but one thing I found very relatable was the fact that Angel is Iranian. So like that I could relate to, even though there wasn't like that much of her being Iranian in the book. But that, and the fact that like her parents were like, why is your whole life like revolved around this boy band? I was like, literally me in middle school. Like
right now.
And my mom being like, why is your whole life like revolving around this vampire? And I was like, let me live.
So act like that's a past issue, though. That is literally... It's
not a past issue. I'm telling you, every 5 years, I find something else that like I just fixate on and become obsessed with. This is who I am. I think it'll happen for the rest of my life. It's fine. I love it.
We can talk about like the representation. Like there was a lot of different. It was a pretty diverse book, and I think it was like it didn't seem forced in any way.
No,
like people were just people. As they are, but it wasn't like, oh, we have our token character, but it just felt like it was a group of people. So, but apparently the representation of being Persian wasn't like, was it just not
organic? In my opinion, they were just like, this is her name and she's Muslim, and those are the only things that you like kind of get. And not that all Iranian people are Muslim, they're not. So that doesn't really have anything to do with being Persian necessarily. But yeah, it was literally just like, her name is Farishte. And I was like, okay. Except she's not going to go by that name at all throughout the entire book. And then her parents never like spoke Farsi to her. And like, I've read other books with like Iranian main characters, and like, they'll write like Farsi words. Like
she said mom and dad.
Occasionally they would say like Maman and Baba, and like sometimes, but like not always.
That was it.
And I was just like, okay. Like the thing was where it was just like, I feel like I was told she was Iranian, but like that was it. And like, I don't know. I felt like there was no aspect of like her culture. There was nothing like it's not like I needed like a lot. I just would have liked her to say, or her parents to say like one thing in Irani, in like Farsi. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a J2O stan though. She loves that drink. That's her personality. J2O and the arc. But do you think we should move on to spoilery sections so we can get to the juicy bits and I can rant about some things?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you haven't read the book yet, or you just don't mind getting spoiled, stick around. I'll count to 5, and then I'm going to say some spoilers. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay,
so fast.
Spoilers. Okay, I just really want to talk about spoilers. Okay, bye. So first of all, this is a random tidbit that really annoyed me. Angel stole Jimmy's grandma's scarf at the end. Do you remember that? Like, she was wearing it as her hijab. And he, like, sent a picture to him. And he's like, oh, yeah, she's wearing my grandma's scarf. She just, like, pieced out of there.
It was like he gave it to her.
I thought so, too.
But
he wasn't, like, upset by it.
No.
I know, but it was very upsetting to me. Because she was just, like, a fan. And they, like, basically, I'm not sure if they ever spoke again. But, like, that one thing, I was just like, she just comes into his life, and I was like, I'm going to stick around at your grandpa's house for so long. And just the whole thing that her being there seemed very awkward. Like, she should have left by then. Like, Juliet was telling her to leave, and she's like, no, I must stay here. And then, okay, but, like, where was the bodyguards? Where was the security? Why didn't they catch him, like, getting out? The whole ending was so weird. He stabbed himself with a blunt knife that was blunter than a butter knife.
He fell on the knife.
Okay, but that's still impaling himself.
It has to be allegorical.
I'm sure like all of this comes back to like the Bible, because like the ark, like the flood, and then like her being an angel, like all of that is allegorical. But like he didn't even fall.
I did not catch that.
I feel like falling in a
very, very, very little knowledge of the Bible, so like I did not catch that at all.
I talk about Noah's Ark like all the time, so I was just like, yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. Well, now that you said like the flood, I was like, oh, that's why it's flooding. So now I get it. But okay,
were there 6 of them? No, there were only 5 of them. I'm like the 2x2 maybe, but were there? There were 6 of them, but one of them was stabbed. Impaled is the better word. I just like I don't know much about the Bible either, so like I'm probably sure I missed so much.
Yeah, for sure.
But he didn't seem to fall that far. It was just like a creek bed.
It's like, he just like you fall on a knife. Like I get like he's like drunk.
He's drunk and like it's raining.
But I'm drunk. I don't fall on knives. Like I'm fine.
A blunt knife.
No. That's the most. The most.
I just felt like up until the part where Jimmy threatens her with the knife, like after the brick thrown in his face.
And they like care more. It seems like they cared more about Jimmy than like they forgot that Rowan was bashed in the head with a brick. He never brings it up again. And it's only a few days later, and then he just like I understand why he didn't trust Angel, because like some girl just like literally yeeted a brick at his head, and they didn't care. Like they didn't bring a bodyguard with him.
Honestly, okay.
After that moment, they should have all had bodyguards.
I feel like the yeeting of the brick is the explanation of this entire book. It was just bricks being yeeted at you the entire time. That was his book. Like you're fine. You think everything's fine, and then yeet.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. But like they already brought up like, oh, maybe we should have a full-time bodyguard, and they're like, nah. Even though Jimmy was like scared to go home, you think he would have asked for a full-time bodyguard? But he was like, nah. I'd rather be murdered to death in my sleep than like have some random guy in my apartment all the time. But like, you think they would force them to have a bodyguard after the brick and him going missing and him brandishing a blade?
What I didn't understand is why he just like so suddenly decided to trust Angel.
Yes!
Yeah, like so skeptical.
Threatens her with a knife, which honestly made some sense because Rowan was just hit with a brick.
Yeah,
so he was scared, which like I fully get. And then she helped him like through the panic attack a bit, which like, okay, so you kind of like trusted her in that moment, which is totally understandable. But then like, I get that like he met up with her because he wanted the knife back, and then like she helped him like get out of that mob. But like, why was he like, I want you to come with me
to my
granddad's house?
I was like, stay in my house. Like even when he was there, like he asked for her to like basically stick around. I'm not sure if he asked her or if she just stuck around in a celebrity's granddad's home, which like why was the grandpa like, yeah, sure, you can bring over Juliet, this random person, the more the merrier. Let's have all these fangirls just like, come on in. What?
Honestly, the more we discuss this book, the more I'm like, I can't with it.
Like, it made sense after the flooding started happening and she couldn't leave, but she could have left before the flooding happened.
Oh, easily.
And
because
then
she brought Juliet over. She could have left before Juliet came over. She could have just gone to the station and the two of them could have gone home.
Yes. And Juliet was like, I'm bringing you home. And then she's like, no. And she's like, okay, I'll stay here, I guess. And they were all okay with it. And she was like weirdly calm. I don't know. But the fact that Jimmy was like, oh yeah, you can bring your fangirl friend over here to my grandpa's place and I will give you the address of my grandpa.
When he didn't give her the address when they were in the taxi going there. Yeah.
And has never met her before, so has no idea if she's trustworthy. Judith is not trustworthy.
Judith.
It was up until the point where she helps him out of that mob, and then he's like, come with me to my granddad's house, where I was like, I like this book. Like I like the way the direction it's going. Like I believe all of this. Like it's doing a pretty good job of representing like fandom culture. And then it was after that I was like, what's happening? Like
I know.
It just became so convenient. Like every plot point became so convenient just to like further this, like, I don't know, just to get to the end, which did not really have a resolution.
No, they were like, in the hospital room.
I love open-ended stories. So like it didn't need to have a resolution, but like it was just like unfinished. It felt unfinished.
It did.
Did he stay in the band or not? It seemed like he did, but like also
unsure.
He said that he did.
Yeah, he seemed like Zane. But like they're like there were all the fangirls like following them around the hospital, and they're like, we're cool with the fangirls now. And I was like, what? After the brick was yeeted, you still trust?
The yeeting of the brick was the downfall. Brick.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I mean by like, this book would touch on something and then not like finish like delving into like the topic. They'd like bring something up. Like she'd be like, I love you. I can't explain it. Like
you're my son.
It's not like I'm actually it's not like I'm actually in love with you, but like you helped me through all this stuff. So like I love you. So they're like, they say that. And then he's like, you don't love me, you don't know me. And then you just leave it there. And then at the very end, he's like, I don't think all of them are crazy. And it was like, okay.
Just the ones who I brandish a blade at. They passed my test.
And also, like, Angel and Juliet, just, like, at the end, they were like, oh, we met them and we realized they're, like, just normal people, which, like, okay, cool, sure. But, like, everyone kind of gets that, even when you're, like, an obsessive fan. Yeah. But, like, then they're just like, oh, I don't know, I'm not really that into them anymore. And I was like,
180, sure. Completely.
That's how it works. Like, let me just say, this might sound like really extra for people who are not super into fandom life, but like when you get out of a fandom, I have experienced like immense grief with that. Like when you like love something that deeply and then like you suddenly fall out of love with it. I mean, it's different if you just kind of like grow out of it or versus like something happens that makes you stop loving it. Like I've experienced like immense grief, like grief that Eileen, like I would equate to like the equivalence of a breakup. Like it was
when he left.
No, I could literally tell you where I was when Zane left the band. I could tell you where I was, what I was doing. I was in the library at my university. I
was in my dorm.
I saw the news, and I was like, no. And I literally like teared up in the library.
True immense grief. So I cannot like I can get over the falling on the knife. I can get over her going to his granddad's house. What I can't understand is how she was just like, okay, like I'm just kind of done now. And I was like, you just met the people who were your idols and you realize they're not exactly who you thought they were. Like, I would be sobbing. Like, I wouldn't really understand why, but I'd be crying and I would feel like kind of every single emotion. And I feel like based on like her past history in this book alone, she would also break down.
Yeah.
So like it didn't make sense
to it. And she's like, this all seems fake now. And like she was, and then there was a lady on the train who was like, are you okay? Like, everything's gonna be solid, dude. And then she's like, I'm fine. And that was like, that was it. And she was at the concert that she spent so much like time, and she was like, this sucks. But like she never actually like had the full like coming to terms with this.
Yeah. And like, it's not like, I mean, the book could have ended before the point where she came to terms with it, but like, I don't know. I just feel like
think about it more.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it just needed to be discussed more. That's literally how I feel about everything in this book. They just needed to go a little bit further. It's like when you write an essay for English class and then your teacher is like, be more specific or like delve or something, and they ask you to like go deeper. Yeah, provide evidence.
Explain your point more.
That's all I wanted. Like the bones were there, but like.
But so something that I really want to talk about is the treatment of fangirls. And there were many different points of like dealing with fangirls. So like, okay, there was like the grandpa who was like, wait, I have it right here. The grandpa who said, the saddest thing about you fans is that you don't care about yourselves. You would give your lives for these boys. You cling to them like you're reaching out to a god. They practically keep you alive. But beneath that, if you took all that away, you fundamentally do not value yourself. All your love is given away. You leave nothing for yourself.
That genuinely made me so angry.
It made me so angry.
I was like, is he supposed to be the villain? Because I really hope he's supposed to be the villain by the end, and he wasn't.
But
and I was like, okay.
At the beginning, he was a loving dude, and then he's like, all of you have no life. Okay, the biggest problem that I had with this is the feeling like there was not really a counterpoint to this too much. The fact that like if you're a fangirl of something, that is your personality. You have no value in yourself. You don't have any life outside of the thing you are a fan of. And like you're basically like pathetic because you love something so much. But then in the back, in the dedication, she dedicates it to people who are fans of like
that's exactly the thing. Like the book constantly contradicts itself.
It says, finally, thank you to the fans, all fans of bands and musicians and YouTubers and actors, fans of books and video games and films and comics. Thanks for being you. You have so much love and passion inside of you, the deepest hearts, which I think was touched on a few times, but the biggest thing, it seemed like almost condescending. It's like,
that's the thing. No, I feel like the whole tone of the book, it was very clear that was her point. Like it was clear that that's what she was trying to say. But then like sometimes like there would be parts where like people you're supposed to be sympathetic for, like the grandfather and occasionally Jimmy and Rowan, would say things. And like, I know they learn kind of by the end.
The eating of the brick. I don't think Rowan learned anything. He already hated the fans, and after that, he hated them still.
Yeah, but like the thing was like it just like she would provide counterpoints, but then not strong enough like support for like to like counter the counter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She'd provide the counter argument, but then like her evidence for why that's not necessarily true wasn't strong enough.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, you're kind of like, if someone reads this and they're not like super into fandom culture, they're gonna they might think that the message of your story is what the grandfather's saying.
Yeah.
Which I know that's not the message of the story.
But that's what Angel was saying about herself too the entire time. She's saying my entire life is the arc. This is why I don't like, I'm not going to my school like graduation thing. Like I don't like, this is my life. And she seems like she's like kind of feeling pathetic about
she herself. Like starts believing it too. Yeah.
But at the end, she doesn't have really her own life. Her whole thing is her being the angel of Jimmy and giving her life to them more. So she never like, I guess she found like Juliet and Bliss as like friends, and that was kind of like something more to her life, but like she didn't find it. She wanted to be a band manager, I guess, is like her new passion, but that's still about the band. You think she'd be like, I want to be like a surgeon because I saw Lister stab himself. Like,
no,
I don't know.
Stab himself.
impaling
on the knife.
But okay, I get the whole point of fandom being like a form of escapism. I agree with that. But it's not, that's a form, it's like with Juliet. She has a life outside of that. It's just, this is her form to like kind of self-care in a way, like remove herself from the situation she's in. But why didn't we have it from Juliet's perspective, or someone in Juliet's shoes who like has things going on?
Well, I think it was fine that from Angel's perspective, in that like the fact that she was so involved in it was because she was avoiding everything in her life. But the problem is that they didn't really explain that. Like, you have to just kind of read into that. And not that I need someone to like physically write out, like, she was literally doing this because she was trying to avoid everything in her life. But like, there was just like not enough there for you to like get a true understanding of that. Like, she was avoiding like her award ceremony thing or whatever it was, and she wasn't paying attention to the fact that Juliet was literally kicked out of her house. Like, she didn't know anything about her close friend of years, and stuff like that. But like, they didn't really like explain that enough. Like, she just kept saying they're my whole life and I have nothing else in my life, instead of like showing you at least a little bit more that she was trying to avoid everything else in her life. And we don't even have a reason for why she's trying to avoid everything else, because there is nothing about her, which I think is the biggest problem. I think that she just needed more like personality.
Besides being an angel,
to understand why she was doing
Jimmy.
it. Yeah.
But okay, so we've talked a lot about like the fandom part, but should we talk about the part with Jimmy following the band? Should we? Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about it, because like I felt like most of the problems was in like the fandom section.
Yeah.
Like, we can't really be in a celebrity's shoes. But the fact that like Jimmy was, I don't know, like all of them seemed to be so unhappy with being famous in a way. Like, it seemed like there was no focusing on like the benefits they got. But like, they're like, oh, there's fame and money.
Yeah. I feel like that's the truth of any story about any famous person, is showing fame isn't all what it seems. They're unhappy, blah, 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 drugs, alcohol, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think, I'm just like so tired of that, which I get. Like, yes, I know it's like that. Like,
but like some like good things, like maybe like like one good thing that Jimmy had was that he was kind of like someone to look up to in like the transgender community. Like, he was able to talk with people who are going through the transition and all of that. But that was like one sentence.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I love
if you had missed that sentence, I don't think you would have known that he was trans.
Yeah.
And like the fact that he wears a pin, and like there was the whole thing with, we'll talk about Lister in a second, because what the heckaroony, I don't know. But like, there was the transgender pin, and then Lister taking the picture of the hormones, and there was an interview where they're like, yeah. So
did Lister get up and like beat or try and beat him up or something?
I think all of them besides Jimmy.
Okay.
Jimmy was just like, no thanks. I like the anxiety the representation. That was one thing that I enjoyed about this book.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
In some sections, it did make me like kind of paranoid. That made my anxiety a little bit worse, because they're like, there could be someone in my closet. I was looking at my closet because I was reading in bed, and I was like, oh no. But I think that was something, and the fact that it's so like readable. Those are two things that I appreciated about the book. Since I don't want to harp about this book like too much, but that's one sentence of not. Now back to Lister. Why did he steal a knife? And why did he take the photo? And why was he just like the villain of this story? Like, what was his motivations for things? Like, I get they try to explain it, but also like, why?
Yeah.
And he just kissed, like, Jimmy was always kissed without his consent. And it was
every single time.
Like, there was no resolution for that.
I know.
I was very upset with that. Like, 2 times people were just like, oh, I like you. Like, oh, I'm going to kiss you now, without like ever saying anything. What? And then Lister, we're supposed to be sympathetic with Lister?
I don't know. I really don't understand what they were doing with Lister. I liked it at the beginning when they were talking about like all the like Rowan and Jimmy like as a ship thing, and like
I like that.
Yeah, I like that because I was like, that's so real. Like I want to know, like
Larry,
even fictionally, what would
for sure.
Larry, it was definitely like reminded me of that. And
yeah, same.
Yeah, I'd want to know fictionally, like what do these band members feel about that? Like how do they feel when they see like these photos leaked or articles coming out saying that this song is about like the other band member and how they're in love and all this stuff. Like I love that. I thought it was super interesting. And then like, I don't know, the Lister stuff just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I like you. And I was like, well, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why are you acting this way? Like, I get that. I mean, he's an alcoholic, right? Like, they like pretty explicitly said that.
Yeah.
So like, he's obviously going through some stuff, and not that excuses his behavior, but like, I don't know, like that also wasn't resolved. Like nothing was resolved.
Yeah. I think the whole, like, I can't even remember what their Joan,
that was her ship name.
I would have liked to see that kind of unpacked more, because I know that with like,
it seemed like Jimmy liked Rowan and was like kind of like a little bit sad. Like it
well, I like, my thing more so was like the fact that it's so damaging to these real people to be doing that to them.
Yeah.
I would have liked that to be actually addressed, and it really wasn't. I don't know. I just feel like this book was just missed opportunities and eating of bricks. That was
but that's why, like, the first half of this book, I was like, up until I think the yeeting of the brick, that was the final straw. But like, even when Bliss, like, she was like meeting up with Bliss, I thought that was like so cool. Like, I thought that was how their lives were going to intersect. Like, she was going to like go back to the band and like meet them that way instead of like whatever roundabout way all this happened.
Yeah, same.
That was the time that there were so many coincidences. Is she like ended up accidentally meeting both Bliss and Jimmy? I'm like, okay, like I could see like Bliss making her a friend and trusting her, but two random celebrity, like tangentially at least, people were randomly like trusting this girl who like was obviously a super fan. But
also, can we just say all of it was because her name was Angel? They were like, that's such a cool name. I'm like, it's not that special or unique of a name that like literally nobody has that. If she had said my name is Ferishte, like more people would have been interested in that. Just saying.
Or say like it means angel in Farsi. But like I know I know several people named Angel, so
yeah.
Okay. But I liked the first half of the book because there was like the fandom meetup and like all like even like the Bliss thing, like that was really cool. And the fact that they were talking about shipping real people and how damaging that was. Like I liked all of these like touchstones of things that I've thought about or have interacted with in like a fandom community. But then the plot came in and
well, that's the thing. So the first half was boring, but had like some good things that it was bringing up. But the second half was like action-packed, but it was like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Like, I get the symbolism of
For sure.
the guardian angel. No, there's people who are like, oh, it's to represent her being the guardian angel. But like, I felt like it could have been done
don't tell.
Yeah, it could have been so much more nuanced. Like, it didn't have to be like, oh, your name is Angel. Oh, heck yeah, you're my guardian angel. Here, have this poem that I wrote about a guardian angel, and also like you are my guardian angel. Like they said it so many times.
Yeah.
The archangel, that was like
just in case you didn't
clever.
get it, it's a symbol.
I just felt like that was so heavy-handed.
Yeah,
it was.
And it also made no sense because she started to turn into like not a person, just like a symbol, and she didn't really have much personality to begin with. And besides Jimmy being her son.
Yeah.
This boy who's older than you. And then you're next to him on a train and you're like, my son. You're taller than him? Is that the only reason why you're like, yeah. I don't know. Like, I get saying that on the internet, but thinking that in real life next to a real life person who you've met all of 2 times.
Yeah.
And the first time he literally pointed a knife at you. Just saying.
Yeah!
My violent stabby son.
Wow. So do we have any last things? I'm gonna look through I took so many random notes when I was reading this book. I literally cried when Lister like stabbed himself. Not tears of like sadness. I was like, what is this? Like I just stood there and like these random tears just started producing themselves and my mouth was aghast. Like, I was like, what? Like, did I read the right book? But, oh, goodness. So, the ending also felt like, there was it was on page 383 that, Angel says that this all seems like really bad fan fiction.
Yeah.
And,
How meta.
Oseman, never put that in a book because people will compare your book to real bad fan fiction because that's what it seemed like. I was like, oh yeah, that's what it is. I'm sorry, but why? So, do we have any last thoughts? Because I don't want to like just complain about this book too much. Like, there was a lot to unpack because
it's really just the second half.
Yeah, really.
Like it just needed to go, like it just needed to develop things a little bit more. Yeah. But like in concept, the weird thing is I kind of feel the same way about this book that I feel about like some fan fictions, and not in that like it feels like a bad fan fiction, in that like when I read fan fiction, sometimes like if there are things in it that I don't like, I just change it in my head and say that like this is what happened instead. And that's kind of how I felt about this book. Like I would do that sometimes when I was like, that's not realistic. He has a bodyguard, or like he didn't fall on the knife. Like he like something else happened, you know? So like I feel like I kind of started doing that in the second half, and I was like, I don't know, maybe that was her intention. If it was, that was like very subtle and genius, but I don't know that it was. So.
We can briefly talk about Mac. That whole thing was like
pointless.
I thought it was going to become something else. At first, I was like upset at Angel because I'm like, are you telling someone they're a fake fan? Like, are you gatekeeping on this community? Like, I thought that was going to turn into that sort of discussion, that he liked it but wasn't a full fan of it. And then like he just left.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, nah, no more. What? And he just like came and told her that, but then didn't go back to Juliet. Did he just like go on a train?
I don't know. He just left.
Also, when did Angel even pick up that knife? Did we ever see that?
I don't remember if we like saw it, but she does say that I only picked it up because I was worried that like someone else would take it or something like that.
Like, give it to security or something.
They don't have bodyguards, remember?
But like someone in charge just be like, hey, this is Jimmy's. Oh, also, she probably had a knife around security. Did no one check these bags? If she like went up and like was brandishing a blade and being like, oh, this is for Jimmy, she'd probably get arrested too. Not gonna lie. Okay. So yeah, that was our thoughts on I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman. I wouldn't recommend it, but I will check out more of Alice Oseman in the future because she's proved in the past that I can enjoy her writing, depending on like the plot of the story. It was mostly the plot. The writing was okay. It was the connecting the dots and like finishing the thoughts.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our
next month we're reading
Wicked Fox by Cat Show will be on Hailey's channel. It'll be probably the last Sunday of July, so we will figure out that date and let you all know. But this is I think it is it set in Korea? But maybe
but it was set in Seoul, you said.
Yeah. Oh, is it? Yes, it is. Okay, so it's set in Seoul, South Korea, and it is fantasy, and there are foxes and magical powers, and like things are. I will leave the Goodreads link down below, and you can check out what it's about. But I'm really excited to read it, and I am crossing all my fingers and toes that it's not as much of a disappointment. Yay! That Hailey won't want to DNF it 30 pages.
Yikes. We'll see.
So any last thoughts?
No. See you next month.
Okay. Sorry about this complaining live show, but I had textual evidence to back up my points. So I felt like it was warranted. I had my MLA citation, and there we go. Okay, so thank you for joining us today in our live show, and we will talk to you all next week with a new live show. Bye!
Bye!